Here I am, as promised, explain why vagabonds were treated as criminals in the Tudor period. Well, you've got to organise your information as a 12-mark question. You don't need an introduction, you don't need a conclusion, you just need to have some paragraphs, some reasons. In an exam, I recommend 2. But I recommend, if you have time at the end, to come back and make 3. So, what would be my key reasons? Well, certainly one that would be making its way into my essay, whether it's the most important or not is up to you, would be the printing press. The printing press meant that information could be spread around England a lot quicker. This is why fear of witches increased in the early modern period, and also why the feelings against vagabonds increased, and the fear of crime increased in this period, largely because of the printing press, meaning more things. It was easier to print stuff and send it around. Pamphlets, leaflets, books, usually pamphlets and leaflets. I know everybody couldn't read, but the information would go to somebody who could read, who would make everybody else aware of it. And the printing press, the things included a lot of information about vagabonds, a lot of stories about the vagabonds, and talking about it being a big problem. So yeah, that was important. As with anything in the early modern period, just have a little think. What seeps into everything in this early modern period, the period of the Tudors and Stuarts? Because I tried to get this across in my teaching, I did mention it a lot. Religion is the answer. Religion comes into this as well, because people were incredibly religious, and of course they believed the following: the devil makes work for idle hands. That's what the Bible says. So they thought that if people were idle, if they were not working, the devil could influence them and they could sin. And so them as Christians thought that they had a duty to root out these vagabonds, to make sure they didn't carry on what they were doing. By the way, going back to the printing press, he would call these people pamphleteers, stoking government and public fear of vagrancy even further. And in fact, in the book, there's a book by somebody called Thomas Harmon. There it is. And you see the little pamphlet of vagabonds. It tells you what it says about them. We've just gone back to the printing press thing. An extract says here, this is from a history book in 1996. Plays and chapbooks, short, cheap pamphlets, so plays and pamphlets about these vagabonds were as popular with the Elizabethans and Jacobeans as detective novels and television soap operas about the police are today. They were excited, they were rascals, they were also a big problem. It was anybody you wanted about. It could be tramps and beggars, it could genuinely be thieves and pickpockets, or it could be somebody who's just struggling to find a job and wanted to find one. But they got the reputation of being outsiders, which could be a third reason. Why were they treated like this? Because they were outsiders. So to give you an understanding, in the medieval period, people did not move around often. For a start, they weren't allowed. They were tied to their land as villeins, if you remember from the Anglo-Saxon bit. You could fancy one. You could say, due to serfdom, the people in the Middle Ages were tied to their land. But by the early modern period, people were moving around a lot more. And so this meant that in tight-knit communities, suddenly outsiders would appear, asking for work, begging. Maybe problems would arise. And just like now, human nature, for whatever reason, if something's wrong in a society, they blame the outsiders. Sometimes the foreigners in modern society. Coming immigrants coming here stealing our jobs. It's always the outsiders. And so the vagabonds, by nature, because they were moving around, they were the outsiders, and so they were treated particularly harshly. They were blamed for things, they were blamed for problems. And maybe linked to this is the fact that the issue of vagabondage became even more a problem at times of bad harvest. So in the early modern period, the population rose, and put simply, this meant that there were less jobs to go around. Well, let me give you a thing from the textbook. Where does it say it now? there we go. In normal years, Oxford Justices of the Peace, so any Justice of the Peace in Oxford, dealt with about 12 vagrants a year. In Salisbury, the Justice of the Peace there, they dealt with about 20. However, in 1598, a year of a bad harvest, these towns were forced to deal with 67 cases of vagabondage in Oxford. So they'd gone from 12 to 67, and in Salisbury, from 20 to 98. Well, why is this? Because at the time of a bad harvest, more people are struggling to find work, there's not as much for them to do, but the people who have got work, the people who live in these places, they're going to be even more resentful about people going around begging and causing trouble, as they perceive it, of course, because they don't have much themselves. So what they're coming over here begging for? We've not got much ourselves. Get them sorted out. And so, yeah, people were the vagabonds treated as criminals and treated particularly harshly at times of bad harvest because of those reasons that I've just mentioned. I need to repeat it, just rewind it. So yeah, there's some things to go on. I'd probably write about printing press, the fact that they were outsiders, the religious element potentially, the fact that they became a problem during bad harvests, that sort of thing. You could choose. You might find it easier to do a paragraph on one of those things and a paragraph that incorporates all the others all in one, give you a lot to write about. Or you could do a paragraph on different sections, but remember in the exam you'd only be able to do 2, potentially, in the time. You might want to see how well you can do with 2 paragraphs. Or you might be somebody who goes, nah, I'm just going to go for the full 3, see what you can fit in there. And remember, if you get a revision guide, get this, use the website, there's things on the early modern period, Quizlet's on there, on early modern crimes, if you look in the right places, on the Quizlet, on the website, and you'll be fine.